everyone the Happy New Year 2025, and we will study the structure and the function of blood and its components to the greater extent. So the blood is a transporting fluid, it's a connective tissue, and it's also the fluid tissue, and the composition of the blood is mainly consisting of the erythrocytes, leukocytes, the platelets, and finally the plasma. Then the blood is divided into the cellular composition and non-cellular composition. Means some of the blood cells are present inside the cell and outside the cell. So the blood corpusculars and the plasma are the two components later. Once again, the blood corpuscles are classified into RBCs, WBCs, and also the platelets. Whereas the granulocytes, which are containing the granules, are also known as the basophils, monocytes, and also the lymphocytes. The granulocytes are monocytes and lymphocytes, whereas granulocytes are neutrophil, eosinophil, and also the basophil. Then the cellular composition of the blood is consisting of red blood cells, white blood cells, and also the platelets. Then the WBCs are also classified as the granulocytes and agranulocytes, and you can see the neutrophils, eosinophils, and basophils are called as the granulocytes, whereas the agranulocytes are known as the monocytes and also the lymphocytes. So the leukocytes are divided into the two bases of the granulocytes and agranulocytes, and once again the granulocytes are as usual the neutrophil, eosinophil, and basophils. You can remember this as NEB, NEB. Then agranulocytes are without any granules, that's called as the lymphocytes and monocytes. And non-cellular composition is the entire plasma. And blood is composed of 55% plasma, that's the fluid matrix of the water, salts, protein, etc. Then 45% cellular elements. And blood cells, RBCs, are about, in case of human beings, it's 5 to 6 million RBCs per ml of the blood, and content of the hemoglobin, which transport oxygen and carbon dioxide. So while blood cells 5,000 to 10,000 WBCs per ml of the blood will be present, whereas the RBCs are very high, 5 to 6 million. Or the lymphocytes are also known as the T cells or B cells. Then macrophages are also called as the phagocytic cells. So these are all white blood cells, and the granulocytes, neutrophils, basophils, and also eosinophils. Whereas the platelets are the regular fragments of the cells which do contain 2 lakh 5,000 to 4 lakh per ml of the blood, and it is an important in case of the blood clotting is concerned. So the composition of erythrocytes is, it is 62 to 70% is water, and 35% of the erythrocytes is solids. Of the solids, 95% is produced by the hemoglobin and the remaining 5% by cell and stromal proteins. Then the lipids, phospholipids, cholesterol, then esters, cholesterol esters, and neutral fat vitamins are also there. And size of the RBC varies from one species to another species. The taking to the species and size in micrometer, goat is 4.1, sheep RBCs are little more, 5, cattle 5.6, horse is also same, pig is 6.2, then man's RBC is very high, that is 7.5 micrometers, and cats is 6.5. So the surface area of the RBCs varies from 57 to 67 meters square per kg body weight. In case of mammals, it is lowest in goat with lower diameter and highest in case of the human beings, which is the 7.5 micrometers. Then the lifespan of the red blood cells are cattle. It is in days 125 to 150 days. Sheep is also little more 140 to 150 days, and almost all the highest margin in case of the goat, horse, dog, etc. is varying from maximum 150, 120 to 150 days. Whereas the cat, it is very less, 70 to 80. Pig, very low, that is 51 to 79 days. Whereas poultry, it is still lower, that is 20 to 30 days. Then human blood smear look like this, whereas the animal blood is also looking somehow smaller under the 10x, which the staining. And physical characteristic and volume of the blood is sticky and metallic tasting. And color of the blood is scarlet because it is oxygen rich, and sometimes it is dull red whenever it is oxygen poor. Heavier than hydro this H2O water, 5x thicker, pH is almost neutral, that is 7.35 to 7.45 this range. The temperature of the blood depends upon the temperature of the animal. Then there's the 38 degrees Celsius or 100.4 degree Fahrenheit. And the total quantity of the blood is taken as 8% of the body weight, or if you consider make it as a round, we can say it the less than 10% of the total body weight. Suppose a human being is weighing about 50 to 60 kg, then he may have the 5 to 6 liters of the blood. Then if you centrifuge the blood, then upper part is called as the plasma, and the plasma is containing serum and fibrinogen, and the less than 1% is buffy coat, which contains the white blood cells or the leukocytes, whereas 45% is containing the blood cells, or they are also called as the erythrocytes. Erythro means red, and hematocrit is equal to the RBC volume. It is almost 45%. Hence, the different composition is like this, and the plasma is 55%. The other blood cells are 45%. Constituents of the plasma is the water, mainly solvent for carrying the other substances, and absorbs the heat, and the electrolytes are containing sodium, potassium, calcium, then magnesium chloride, and also bicarbonate for the buffering mechanism. And plasma proteins are also known as albumins and globulins, and also the fibrinogens. And all of these are required for osmotic balance, pH buffering. Then the fibrinogens are required for clotting up of the blood, then self-defense mechanism of the lipid transport. So substances that are transported by the blood is the number one oxygen, and also the excretion of the carbon dioxide, and the nutrients, maybe the imported things like glucose, and the volatile fatty acids. In case of the cattle, amino acids and also the vitamins are being transported by the blood to the different organs. and waste products of the metabolism like the urea, then uric acid, then the gases like oxygen and carbon dioxide are also carried by the blood. And here you can see that the formed elements like the cellular elements are called as about 45%. Then the erythrocytes are highest, that's the 4 to 6 million, and they transport oxygen and help transport the carbon dioxide. Whereas the leukocytes are also known as the white blood cells. So the white blood cells do account to 4,000 to 11,000 cells per millimeter cube of the blood, and they look after the defense and immunity. And the leukocytes are classified into basophils, eosinophils, and among them the most dominant cells are the neutrophils. Whereas the platelets account for 2,50,000 to 5 lakh, which are required for the blood clotting. Is the one of the important mechanisms. So here you can see the white part, which is shown in between the blood cells, which is occupying the huge area, is the plasma, which is 55%. Whereas the red blood cells are 5 million per ml, and the white blood cells, what you are seeing in the picture. So the white blood cells, approximately the quantity is 5,000 per ml of the blood, whereas the RBCs are in million, whereas the white WBCs are in thousands, and followed by the platelets, and they have got their own number. And plasma is a colored liquid, consists of H2O as the water and dissolved solvents. Many type of the solvents are there, and the ions, metabolites, hormones, antibodies. Then all these are the natural components of the blood cell, and sodium is the major solute of the plasma, and liquid part of the blood is also called as the plasma transporter system, and it carries the waste products, then also hormones and also the antibodies. Then composition of the blood, especially of the plasma, 90% of the plasma is water, and remaining more than 100 other substances in plasma are salts or the electrolytes, nutrients, gases, hormones, and then plasma proteins. Then various wastes of products of the cell membrane, and plasma constituents about 7 to 9% of the plasma protein, that the albumin, globulins, etc. Then the clotting proteins are also required. Then the antibodies are also the plasma protein part. So all these are called as the proteins, and plasma proteins usually consist of 7 to 9% of the plasma, and three types of the plasma proteins are there: albumin, globulin, and also the fibrinogen. Whereas the albumin accounts for 60 to 80% of plasma protein made by the liver, which creates the colloidal osmotic pressure that draws water from interstitial fluid into the capillary system to maintain the blood volume and also the blood pressure. And globulins carry the lipids. And apart from this one, alpha globulin, beta globulin, then the gamma globulin are the three important globulin components. And the gamma globulins are the antibodies usually, and the fibrinogen constitutes about 4% of the plasma protein. Then the important clotting factor converted to fibrin during the clotting process, whereas the serum is fluid left when blood is going to clot. So when it automatically clots, then it's called as the plasma serum. Then plasma, the 55% is water, content is as per the situation required, whereas the salt like sodium, potassium, manganese, chloride, and bicarbonate are always required for the buffering action. And plasma proteins are albumin, fibrinogen, and globulins. So these two serve as the osmotic balance, pH buffering, then this defense mechanism of every cell. So the waste products are urea, uric acid, and unwanted cell debris and many more. And apart from this one, respiratory gases, oxygen is required and carbon dioxide to be thrown outside the body. And many hormones are being transported and they will act whenever it is required. They are going to occupy such receptors and going to elicit a function. So the blood plasma components are kept relatively constant. So respiratory system, the kidneys maintain the pH, especially in the acidosis. Then whenever there is a too acidic, then alkalosis is caused by secretion of the bicarbonate ions in the normal situation. So the blood temperature will be maintained by plasma. So the cell types of erythropoids, leukocytes, basophils, and the platelets do have different type of the structures. Erythrocytes, as you know, these are produced from the bone marrow. Then the leukocytes and also basophils, all of these are produced from the bone marrow stem cells, whereas the erythropoids before they get generated. So there is a process, and the heme and the proteins they mix together and do the function of the high binding with it of the scientific community and cause the necessary action. So erythrocytes are without any nucleus, whereas they are filled with hemoglobin, which carries oxygen, whereas it is a biconcave discs. So greater surface area for gas exchange and 5 into 10 raised to 6 cells per one small cubic millimeter, means you can just get how many quantity will be present in 8 liter of the milk. So the other things to discuss, half-life of the average half-life is plus or minus 120 days, and usually the it contains the 280 million hemoglobin and also the 4 heme components. There is a species difference in the structure of the uh, erythrocytes. Number one, they do not have the specific nuclei, and that's why there is extra space inside the RBCs. Whereas these cells do contain the hemoglobin for the supply of the oxygen to all the organisms and the body. and 250 million molecules per cell or as a day they have invented. And there is an increase in the surface area for more oxygen that can be carried wherever it is required. Usually, this hemoglobin gets saturated from the oxygen and it forms the carboxyhemoglobin. Then it is going to give the carbon dioxide to the animals in this earth and sometimes start traveling also. And formed elements are the erythrocytes and RBCs are flattened biconcave discs. When hemoglobin is a colored substance that is always required for carrying the oxygen from the different tissues. Whereas the red blood cells do transport oxygen, then specialized to do this, whereas also carries the same like the carbon dioxide because both are simultaneously taken inside outside and they will be carried somewhere else in the form of the shell, etc. So the blood should contain more number of RBCs and also more quantity of the blood should be there. That's the two criteria is there, and if the criteria is not fulfilled, means that there will be a situation known as anemia. So there will be an exchange mechanism of oxygen and carbon dioxide from that of the blood, and they will be having close proximity to that of the other hurdles. So anemia results from lower RBCs. So it's a disease of decrease in oxygen carrying capacity of the blood. And or deficient hemoglobin is also another thing. And animals from lower RBCs are the sudden there will be a hemorrhage and sometimes it is as an accident. The hemolytic crisis will directly start. Of course, the Afghanistan and many countries where in which the zoos etc. are maintained by the monkeys, surprisingly. So anemia is a abnormal hemoglobin. Sickle cell anemia means the deficient in hemoglobin. A point mutation changes to the single amino acid. Whereas the excessive RBCs is a rare phenomenon and it is an abnormality or in case of the bone marrow or high altitude. So the excessive fat in the blood thickens and slows the blood, impairs the circulation. The white blood cells are also classified into only three type of the category. Number one, this thing says number two is an almost invisible, so named after the stain. Then leukopenia is the reduction in total number of the cell and their count also. White blood cells are will have very characteristic staining. So even the non-experiment or non-biological people can themselves it in the usual way. But let us not. Leukocytes are classified into neutrophils. Then also the same type of the nucleus is eosinophils, whereas the basophils is the third thing that virology is. Once again, there are agranular and granular cells are there, and accordingly they are classified as lymphocytes, then monocytes. Then this is the classification of the myeloid stem cell. Then it's going to taken up and hemocytoblast is going to take place. Then lymphoid stem cells are also be selected. Then secondary stem cells they are. Then myeloid stem cells they give rise to the erythropoietin, then monocytes, platelets, neutrophils, eosinophils, then basophils, and many more. Hence, we can have our own health concept because this blood cannot be changed with simple cost, just like the urination, etc. But they are worth to study better also, monocytes and the neutrophils. Neutrophils are granulocytes. Eosinophils and basophils are also similar type of the granules. And apart from the receptor which is required for the said purpose, they have there are certain shells which have containing the granules as per their storage capacity, etc. Agranulocytes means they do not have any nucleic acid nucleus, which fills most of the cells and play an important role in the immune responses, etc. The largest of the white blood cells are the monocytes and function as the macrophages, then important in fighting chronic infections. So lymphocyte, monocyte, then platelets, then these are all phagocytes. So they also perform their own functions. Then hematopoiesis takes place in the myeloid cell. Then the erythropoiesis is formation of the more and more number of the RBCs. So the leukopoiesis is formation of the WBCs. Then hematopoiesis is the formation of the blood cells. It has got two types. That is, one is erythropoiesis and other one is leukopoiesis. Because more erythropoietic drugs are there at the same time, the security of all these persons will be maintained by the leukocytes. So blood cell is formed in the red bone marrow by the stem cells. So they are converted into erythroblasts, then myelo, then myeloblasts, myelo, oh, so erythrocytes already we have known, and red blood cells are the derived from the stem cells, which are present in lymphoid stem cells. So after this, these lymphoblasts are doing their job, and A or the B symbolize anti lymphocytes proceeded in the proceeding in High Court of Karnataka. When the reduced oxygen of the kidneys is reduced oxygen, then also the other situations like all these type of the shelter for the birds is provided without disturbing them, let them live like that. Leukopenia is the different type of the stages of WBC production. Then granulocytes or why it is called as the with certain potentials. They will also bind with the receptor for which we have done. So there is a connective tissue and the white blood cell, then blood capillaries are present here. Erythropoiesis takes place in bone marrow, then ultimately nucleus are this expelled, then reticulocytes and erythrocytes will be present finally. Then, as usual, the types of blood, arteries and the veins. Arterioles are the branches of the arteries. Then, increasing blood flow into capillaries is going to cause the vasodilatation. Once again, blood types are ABO, and the antigen on the red blood cells will be different, and the different types of the blood will be given to the specific type of the individuals after matching with that of the original donor with their content. There are certain hemolytic diseases of the newborn or BC cell. Suddenly they lost. Mother is rich in TRH negative and the red blood cells lack across the placenta. Mother makes anti-RH antibodies. Then also the antibodies attack RH positive red blood cells in case of child. And blood transfusion reaction, sometimes severe allergic reaction uh, is going to happen, and the blood clotting is a cessation of the bleeding, and it is caused by vasoconstriction, platelet plug, and web fibrin, as we are seeing in this particular type of the cells. And roll up the platelets, always they stick to the intact endothelium because of the presence of prostacyclin, and the platelets also serve for these particular cells. Then roll up the platelets, as you know that they are very much required to the human body, just like serotonin and thromboxins, which stimulate vasoconstriction, reducing blood flow to the wound. And role of fibrin is always it is going to form the clots, and conversion of fibrinogen to fibrin is caused by the platelets and can occur via two-way intrinsic and extrinsic pathways. So this is dissolution of the clots, then anticoagulants, then about the chapter very fastly we have discussed many of the things, and today is 1st January 2025, and have a nice day. Bye and take care.